It's time to get clear, get heard, and get paid. And join us on our Soul Business Retreat. Attract your dream clients and income over 3 nights as we shape your passion into a business that makes a profit. Follow our 13 steps to reach 5K in 30 days in the beautiful Byron Bay. Whether you're starting, growing, or expanding your business, our all-inclusive 3-night retreat is the place for you. Check out the details in the show notes, and we hope to see you soon. Welcome to Willow Healing Matters, the podcast. We are so excited to have you joining us on this journey where we explore different ways to empower your soul, whether it's healing in your kitchen or all the way up in the corporate world. Come with us as we look into different ways to heal your mind, body, and soul. Hey everyone, it's Catherine from Willow Healing, and today I have Stephen Daniel joining us. So he is an artist and a writer, and he started his writing journey through journaling, which led to a series of self-discovery about himself and also inspired him to start his writing journey, which included screenplays. Through a series of events, he started to have out-of-body experiences, which then led to the inspiration for Brighter Realms, which is a book about the origin of insight, intuition, and creativity. So a big welcome to the show, Stephen, and thank you so much for being here.
Thank you for having me.
And
delighted to be here.
Beautiful. And just before we started recording, we were really unpacking a bit about your journey, which has been very multifaceted. You've had lots of different roles, but we were talking about how, journaling led to that, very much that self-inquiry. Did you want to lead into what that meant for you?
Well, I think I was journaling for quite a few years to learn about myself. And I started out focused on the world. And I think the more that you journal, the more that vision becomes focused on what the process, the life process and the experience is about. And that's self-knowledge, self-discovery, self-awareness for me. And it became less relevant what was happening outside of me. And I sort of focused my curiosity to the inside of me to explore that inner domain, the inner realms of who I am, where I come from, where I go from here. Why do I feel the way I feel? How I look at the world, how that's always changing, how I can have an experience in the world and an emotional experience, and then reframe that experience with a new vision of myself through the journaling process, through the self-discovery process, which also includes meditation or even taking a walk in the sun or in a sunset. There are many ways that we touch that side of ourselves. And I began to just live with one foot in my physical world and another foot in those other realms. And that became a fascinating way for me to observe my experiences and, of course, that of the world. And this has led me to write a book, Brighter Realms, about who we are, where we come from, where we go from here, the origin of insight, intuition, creativity, empathy, compassion, and love.
Yeah, that's so beautiful. And so when you were having your out-of-body experiences, did you find you were just getting taken to different versions of your life, or were you taken to like different realms? How did that kind of come about? You can be as woo as you like too.
I wanted to correct you. The out-of-body experiences started very young. Really, I don't have a memory of my life without them.
Beautiful.
In my childhood, I would initially have experiences where I would go to sleep and then have flying dreams.
Yep.
And the flying dreams were puzzling to me. And as I was around 6 years old, and I could talk to my mother about it, but she didn't understand. So I really didn't share with her. She confessed to me later that she used to have flying dreams. But there was a commercial. Well, let me go back a little bit. There was a dream that I would have, a reoccurring dream where I would walk on a path, and I'll get back to the flying dreams, and cross a little footbridge and come up to a house made of screens. And there was a sliding door in this house, but the door represented a threshold that I could not see past. I couldn't enter it. And it took me a number of years to be able to enter that threshold and go into that house. And there was a woman and a child who lived there. And the woman and child was my wife and my daughter.
Wow.
And I understood that I was a soldier in that lifetime, and I would go out on campaigns and be away from home for long periods of time and then return. And I would bring the conflict of trauma into my home. So it was not a home of harmony. It was a very difficult period, and I was very involved with the leadership and political aspiration of that world that drove the society into warfare. And that experience, I didn't understand it, and I tried to assign a relationship to it for a number of years. It just puzzled me, but it began to make sense when I started to look at it as a past life memory.
Mm.
And that past life memory opened up other pathways to memory of other lifetimes, other experiences, other roles. And so we'll get into that in more detail, but getting back to my out of body experiences, because it's all relative.
Yeah.
These early experiences were taking me into what I perceived as other environments in this time and place and other times in other places. And sometimes the experiences would take me into fields of color and light, or what I perceived as environments that were very much like the earth, except the colors were extraordinarily vivid and vibrant, something that I hadn't experienced in the earth life system. And then at other times, I would go into environments that resembled nothing like earth, and I would move in and out of these environments as if passing through one area to another area, or environment into another environment. Sometimes there were environments that I could not enter. And I began to look at this relationship to these experiences as being guided by a force that was really much, much bigger than me. And the word force, we give so many names to these ideas of our experiences. And the names are just human labels. But what I'm trying to get at is that these are really experiential events that shape, and I think that we're all relative in this sense that many, many people have experienced these kinds of events in their lives, and that we may struggle to understand the meaning and the context, how we fit in. And that has led me to really a lifetime of investigation to be able to right or wrongs, and put these environments into the context of stages that are created for me to have experiences. And they're created for me with the oversight of a higher self. What I perceive is my core essence, and by extension, I am its essence, split off to experience different environments. Here I am in the Earth life system, and yet I have this capacity to move into other environments and to unhook from my physicality and have other experiences in other places, and then return to this environment. And when I'm not here someday, I will be in the non-physical. That's how I perceive it anyway, where I will be re-establishing those connections with my higher self and what I perceive as my energy system, and highly organized and intelligent association of relationships I have direct relationship with, that are a part of an energy system of which I am a part, and that all human beings have and come from an origin of their energy system and their higher self. Primarily their higher self that is part of that energy system. And an energy system can have multiple higher selves, and it can have one or more human extensions in physicality or other environments at a given time. So these are just my views, and my investigations have led me to this perspective about our relationships here and in the larger scheme of our experience, of our existence, really. And brighter realms covers this in some detail. In fact, quite a bit of detail.
Yeah, and
So
I love what
yeah,
you
go ahead.
said about your higher self and there's multiple facets of you in human forms, because I find that when I try and explain it to people too, because we have this linear understanding of time, and it's like, no, there's multiple things that can be happening at once, and you can tap in. Like, it's just really hard to explain how.
Yeah, well, you you
Yeah,
you you hit it. You can tap in.
yeah,
You can read between the lines. But this takes a willingness and a determination to really put ourselves into that frame of mind. And part of the book explores exercises for tuning into our essence
mm,
to enable us to expand our awareness. But so it's interesting. You also have these experiences, which is so curious to me because I'm always wanting to learn from other people's experiences.
yeah. So for me, when I started my spiritual journey, I clearly came into this body and this lifetime to clear past life karma, because the amount of clearings, and I say past life, but it can be past, parallel, future, whatever, and when I started to work into it, when I went into my higher self, there was this door. For me, I always see a door, like a portal door. And I will go through the door, and they usually have different symbology on it depending on what it is. So I went through this door, and there was my 5-year-old self, and my 5-year-old self was the gatekeeper to get to these past lives, because that is the point in my life where I turned off all my spiritual gifts completely and then had to reawaken them.
Interesting.
Yeah. So, although I've had to do work to reconnect with her too, so she doesn't feel like she's just the portal guardian, because we had to be very responsible. And then as I started to unpack those, my like, I'm very clairvoyant, so for me, I could see it playing out like a movie, but the feelings were so incredibly real. And then one of them I was so upset by. It took me a week to grieve what had happened. With all there was a lot of witch wounds, there was a lot of trauma, but then there's been ones that have been off world as well. Like, I went back to my original soul creation as well. And so that was really interesting. Like, that's where kind of fear came from, because the experience I just remember running for my life. And then, it's been really interesting. There's certain key points that are very vivid, and I'm going to put them into books actually and write them actually as like a Claire series, because I had different stronger Claires in each one. So if anyone's not sure what a Claire is, it's a psychic gift. And as I was unpacking it all, there's one life at the moment it's an off-world one, and I can feel it's still going on right now, and I want to write her story, and I've written it to a point, but I can't finish it yet because her life's not finished yet. It's almost like I need to honor that and keep like tuning into it to see when she's ready to share her story. So it's been really interesting. And then the most I've tapped in and gotten even more is, if anyone does breath work, I do like a style of breath work with this person called Rebirth Breath Work. And through that, I really uncovered like a lot of gifts and did a lot of healing. And yeah, so I fully understand what you mean by there's different fragments of your higher self that you can tap into and tune into. Yeah.
It's so curious that you describe the breath work as a way to help tune into ourselves. And I see that as tuning into that fundamental intelligence, the timeless aspect of us, the essence, our essence. So when you describe your 5-year-old self,
Mm.
you're describing, in my view, that relationship that you have to the inner child, if you will. Children so naturally tune into their essence. They are so present. Their presence is remarkable.
Yeah.
And the way to experience our larger identity is by tuning into that part of ourselves that remains outside of the conformity of the world. Beyond 5 years old, we start conforming
Mm-hmm.
to the world. We develop many beliefs. Our belief systems become the fundamental way that we experience our world. And yet, before that time, our 5-year-old self, our 4-year-old self is still, very much connected to and committed to the journey that we've arrived from. And then we spend our lives, learning to transcend the experiences of physicality through meditation, through taking a nap, through playing with a child, playing with our animals, standing in a sunset, taking a walk. We do many different things that help us to move beyond ourselves to experience other worlds. And we are very, very good at crossing these boundaries. It's just that we tend to get bogged down by the weight of our emotions and the experiences around us. So that 5-year-old self that you're talking to and having a relationship, I would suggest that's your essence. And your essence is tied directly to your higher self.
Yeah.
So it's that part of ourselves when we can rest in the knowing of our essence and be close to our we use the term child, I just say essence, that we can begin to develop an expanded awareness of our relationship to ourselves and to the world in which we live in.
Definitely, and being really in touch with the essence of you, it's so fundamental because, like you said, we get all these beliefs placed on us. And for anyone that's wondering, when kids get to about 7, that tends to be where we go into this, believing what everyone else tells us, and then
I mean, I've seen it younger than that. I've seen it in 4-year-olds who have just adopted wholeheartedly their parents' thinking process. By 5 or 6 or 7, they're 100% committed. There's no turning back. At that point, they make the break into physicality and the physical beliefs and perception, and they willingly let go of where they've come from, but not always. And of course, I've met children who are in an adult body who have maintained those connections and that awareness. And I'm talking to one right now.
Well, thank you. Well, I did have to do a lot of unpacking to get back there. Although I did laugh.
Well, it's interesting what you said about past lives. And it is, I think, an important part of our experience is the recognition that we are more than our bodies. We look in a mirror and we see that what we're looking at, physical self, the ego, the intellect, is just a part of the suit that we wear. And yet, if we can move and look beyond ourselves, our physical identity, we see that we are like a train and we carry an enormous amount of cargo behind us. And some of it is useful and some of it is not. And the useful is what I would term resources, and what is not useful is baggage that we're carrying from perhaps experiences in other lifetimes that would be better off left on the side of the road. And as you described, coming to terms with that can be challenging. It's not about pondering in the past and reliving our past experiences for the rest of our life, but it's about recognizing how we were changed and those experiences, how they served us, and then being willing to let them go, and being willing to accept who we will become when the obstacles that we picked up along the way are no longer in our lives, are no longer present. And that is the hardest thing to do, that acceptance of who we will become when obstacles are no longer present. That is a challenging and difficult thing. It certainly was for me. And I've gotten better at it. And looking at my lifetimes, I've been able to take an accounting of those experiences, the sadness, the pain, fear, and the anger, which I picked up in those experiences and which were being projected into my present world. And that's what karma is. It's one of the ways we can look at karma. And then being willing to go back and just observe ourselves. A simple technique of writing these things down, whatever comes to our memory. Certainly, if we have a past life memory, we have a glimmer of an awareness of a past life, we have an opportunity to begin to take an accounting of it, and then look at our acceptance as a way to understand that those experiences are just a moment in time. They're a moment in time that they have no more bearing on who we are and where we are in our present life, but we still need to choose and make that choice through willingness to sever ties from the past in order to live more fully in the present. And that's not always an easy thing. But the benefit of recognizing where we've come from and how that shaped our experiences, and then being willing to break the ties, gives us an opportunity to open a new chapter. We close a chapter and we open a new chapter. And then that memory from our past doesn't need to leave us. We're transformed by it. And now we're learning to understand where we've come from in order to understand where we want to go, to be able to make the choices to reframe our lives and to create a new vision of ourselves for the future.
Yeah, exactly. And I used to joke with my spiritual mentor that why would we want to do all this again? Why not heal it and feel it and really tune into it and let those karma and those different trains and like you said, fully accept them as part of who you are rather than keep trying to push them aside. And when you were talking about, understanding how that influences us, I had this moment where I was driving my car and I wanted to overtake this other car and somehow change all these gears. And I went into race car driver mode, right? And I'm like, I don't drive a manual. I've never driven a manual. And I'm sitting there like waiting to change the gears and put the clutch in and everything. And I was like, ooh, this isn't me. It was just in that moment.
Yeah.
And at some point,
Sounds
I was
like
a race
fun.
car driver. Yeah, it was interesting. But it's those moments, and if anyone's curious who's listening and they want to know, oh, like, was that a past life thing? It's almost like a feeling of deja vu. Like you start doing something and you just know how to do it, and you have no idea how you know how to do it. So for me, like even I was making some smudge bundles out of eucalyptus because we're surrounded by eucalypts, and I'm making them, and they came out perfect. And everyone's like, "How did you make them?" I said, I don't actually know. I just started doing it and just had this deep inner knowing of how to do it. And it was just that, that past life experiences kind of weaving in. And I guess that's where when you start to tap more and trust that coming through, that all this magic starts happening. That's the only way I can describe it.
You said something a moment ago, fighting against ourselves, when we resist, when we struggle against our emotions and feelings. This is basic psychology, but it's so interesting how it relates to awakening awareness of who we are, where we come from, our relationships here and beyond ourselves. I say ourselves, our physical selves. And that tuning in enables us to make a choice about letting go, to embrace and experience, and in an emotional context, the way that we experience our lifetime has been influenced heavily by our emotions. And then leaning into our emotions to see them as they are. And the more that we're able to lean into our emotions, they lose their power. Of course, there are emotions that still hang around and they're very strong. But this acceptance is a process. And to the degree that we learn to identify and accept our emotions is really the degree that we can make space to free ourselves and move into a new experience, to reframe our lives.
Yeah, and it's funny because a big part of coaching, like when I've been coached and when I coach my clients, is that if we can't truly accept all parts of ourselves, even the parts that we want to push away, all emotions, even that self-doubt that might come up that's stopping you, you'll never love yourself completely and you can never feel like you're whole. And like you said, like the more you tap into those emotions and just accept them and let them be and observe them, then that's when you can get this transformation and be able to truly show your essence to people.
Yeah, I think that was very, very well put. And, I don't want to suggest that, hey, it takes many, many years to figure this out. It really is a switch that
Yes.
Once we make that transformation within us, to begin doing the work of identifying our feelings, of becoming aware, of tuning into our emotional landscape, the physical, mental, psychological, and spiritual landscape, there we begin to explore at the level of the essence. Remember, this is where the hidden layers of our inner self reside, our essence. And once we're touching there and having that experience and moving through our life with the awareness of our essence, we are much more readily able to access empathy, compassion, and love. And empathy, compassion, and love is the sign of our essence. That's fundamentally who we are. That's those feelings are universal in the sense that everybody knows them. And we also recognize, I think, on some level, that when we're experiencing pain, anger, or fear, these emotions diminish our capacity for empathy, compassion, and love. And to tune into those emotions, we need to work within ourselves. You know, there's no lesson that's going to come from outside us. I mean, I wrote a book, that's great, but that's just a piece of the puzzle for each of us. The real puzzle begins within us. It's not outside of us. And to the degree that we learn to know ourselves and get to know ourselves is the degree that we become more intuitive, insightful, and creative, because therein lies our empathy, compassion, and love. Empathy, compassion, and love are directly related to insight, intuition, and creativity.
Mm. And it's funny you say that, because when I started my spiritual journey, I was very, how did I describe that? I very much pushed my creativity away. Like, I would be the one that said I'm terrible at art, or I'm terrible at, that. But in saying that, I always played music, right? And then I got to a point where I was like, got to like the end years of school, and I'm like, oh no, I've got to concentrate on my studies, and I pushed it all away. And then it was when I started to unpack and go through my spiritual awakening, I'll say reawakening, that I truly then went, oh, actually, I want to make candles, and I want to make smudge bundles, and I want to make teas for people, and and then all of a sudden I relearned how to read music and play the keyboard. And, it was through all that all of a sudden you have all this creativity, and then the writing came back out, writing for me, like, that was my creative expression, and through speaking, and then a creative podcast. But it all was driven from really trusting that inner wisdom again, and not pushing away that creative element of me. And it's not that you're doing it from making money, you do it for yourself, right? And then if you end up selling something, that's a bonus.
Sure.
I know you being an artist, and you were sharing your beautiful paintings, that, you do that for you. And then if someone else sees that in it, that's even a bonus, right?
Absolutely. The journey to discover and learn about ourselves should be shared. It should be shared openly with open hearts. And this is something that I aspire to very much in my work. That, as I was saying earlier, I've done enough work on myself, enough journaling to kind of get myself out of the way and begin to create something that I think is relative to other people, to their experience. And I hope that they share in that view, that they can learn to get to know themselves on a fundamental level as we do this inner discovery. We learn that everything comes from us. And the world kind of fools us. Our ego kind of fools us. It wants us to think that the world is separate, that we're a part of many, many different parts, and certainly we are. And yet our essence is simply connected. And that awareness unifies us with this larger field, what I call the larger field of consciousness, that tunes us into innate awareness and innate understanding. One of the experiences I had doing out-of-body experience is going into other environments where you just know. You see things and you know them, you recognize them, you recognize that this is your home, and that the world is a place that we temporarily visit. And so it's by tuning in to ourselves that we make these connections to our origin. And that's where the real fun happens. That's where our awareness, and we expand our awareness and the understanding of our relationship here beyond, and where we can learn and grow.
100%. And I so agree with what you were saying that, our out of body experiences, a lot of people will just put them down to dreams or that sort of thing. But even if you feel it's a dream, just be curious about it and pull that thread and see what it means.
There was a point in my experiences where I began to unhook without being asleep.
Yeah.
Or have transcendental experiences, speak with what I perceive as my higher self, direct one-on-one communications, and receive messages. One such event, I was walking on a trail at night in Colorado. It was about 10 o'clock at night. There was a half moon and the snow had fallen. Everything was very bright. Now, this was a full moon night. I used to walk often up there on the full moons when the snow had just fallen.
Beautiful.
And I was walking toward the tree line. And I was with my German Shepherd. And suddenly, as I neared the tree line, I heard a voice. This was about 30 years ago. And it said to me, "Do not proceed. Return to where you came from." And it was as if a friend was standing at my side. And I said, "Okay." And I turned around. I began walking down the trail. Well, I learned later that there was a mountain lion in the tree line. And I had been warned. And one of the stories I write about in the book is about a gentleman who went into the Australian outback. He was living his life in Melbourne and not happy and trying to figure out who he was. And he went into the Australian outback and he described very similar experiences. For example, when I heard the voice, I felt a tingling sensation move throughout my body. It was a very warm sensation, but there was a warning in that sensation. And I felt, okay, I got to pay attention to this. He described precisely the same sensation in his body as he tuned to the Australian outback. Here's a guy who never spent a day in the wilderness. And he just decided to go and live in the outback for 2 years. He was going to go for a few months. He ended up spending 2 years. He told me by the second year, he was so attuned to the environment, he could feel or sense danger. He would have that warning in his body. He could pull back a branch and see a poisonous snake or a spider or some kind of animal that he needed to stay clear of.
Australia. Yeah, we got them all.
Yeah. So many of the experiences, out-of-body experiences, happen spontaneously, but usually when I was in a restful and alert state. For example, I pulled over on a highway once driving, and I lied down before I fell asleep. I was simply out of my body, moving above the car. I felt, I need to return to my body to continue driving, and I popped back in within a second.
Yeah.
The thought directed me right back to my body. I sat up as if I had rested for hours. I took the rest of the drive. It was probably 6 or 7 hours left in the drive. I'm fully awake, fully alert, as if I had slept the night before. And other events that occurred, I write about them quite extensively in the book, Brighter Realms. But once we're able to be present with our essence, we open up a world of possibilities. And dreams, while many of our dreams are fantastical and they take us into environments where we can't really make sense of the experience, we're just left with this puzzling feeling of what was that about? Well, I have an exercise for understanding those dreams and tuning in. But then other dreams can take us directly into non-physical environments with fantastic clarity. And these are other types of dreams that I write about in Brighter Realms.
Yeah.
And, dreams have been a big part of tribal cultures for thousands of years. And there are tribal communities who recognize through seers and shamans that dreams are a big part of our experience, and that it's important to pay attention because that's where our physical identity and ego is left behind, and we move into other environments so that we bring a lot of the characteristics of our human self, or we perceive that. What's really happening there is this mental, psychological, and spiritual landscape is now unfolding before us on this tapestry of possibility.
Yeah.
And that's where most of our dreams happen, I think. And it's okay to let go and have those experiences and be puzzled by them. But we can learn about what they mean to us. Of course, there are myriad books and counselors who want to assist in people learning about their dreams. And I think this is a big question for us. What are our dreams? Why do they happen? Well, we're interfacing with non-physical environments. We're bringing a part of us into that environment, part of our physical self into that environment, or at least the mental, psychological, and spiritual landscape. And yet there are other dreams that I write about where I simply leave all of that identity behind, as if the physical self no longer exists, and I lose total memory of who I am. These are lucid dreams.
Yeah.
And I go into the non-physical as an adventure to have an experience, and I return back to my body, sometimes disappointed that I couldn't stay there, that I couldn't just simply leave here and stay there, but always happy to be back. I think that physical life has enormous intrinsic value, and it's that part of our purpose is setting ourselves free to be able to have experiences, and then as well let go of trying to use our mind and ego to understand them, but rather allow ourselves to integrate the experiences energetically through the awareness of our essence and higher self.
Yeah, and it's interesting you say that, because I'll often get downloads, like the intuitive downloads, and people are like, how do you know that? And I'm like, I just do. And it's just, and I stopped questioning it when I first started happening to me. I'd sit there on Google and try and figure out if it was true or not, and it always was. But it was just, the best experience I had was I was talking to a friend, and her late husband was going through gene therapy, and she was trying to explain it to me. And I just had this instant download of information come through, obviously from my higher self, and I fully understood what she was talking about. And we're having this deep, thorough scientific thing, and she's like, how do you know that? And I was like, just do. And she's like, okay, because she's also quite intuitive as well. She's like, all right, I accept it. Whereas another person would just be there going, like, what did you just Google something? Like, so it's really interesting when you get those insights. And like you were saying, dreams have multi layers. Like, it's very fascinating. And even people who say I can't dream, I'm like, well, there's a message in itself, right? Like, what is it about that you're denying what's coming through too? So it's so many things to talk about. But
I know we're pretty complex, really, when it gets right down to it. Our experience here is, it's not, it can be very simple, and it can be delightful and pleasant, and yet there are complexities behind us. And it would behoove us to, really what I'm saying here is, we could spend our lifetime trying to pull back the layers with our ego and our mind to try to connect the dots. It's not going to work. It's impossible. But our spiritual aspect of us, our essence, is already connected to this information, this source of information. And therein really lies a clue to be able to acquire insight, intuition, and the awareness of who we are and what these experiences mean. I have an exercise for that in my book that I like to share with people. Yeah. And so it's a important, I think, milestone for us as human beings to recognize that we are more than our bodies, and to begin exploring the emotional content that makes us who we are. One of the clues that I look at for dreams, for example, is we wake up from a night of dreaming, and we have one dream that really stands out for us, and we ask ourselves, boy, what did that mean? And I think a better question is, how did that make me feel? Because it's the feelings that are tuning us into the inner landscape of our mental, psychological, and spirituality. And when we're tuning in there, we are touching the hidden layers of our inner self, where our essence resides. And our essence is the key to expanded awareness and being able to put our human self aside, our ego and our mind aside, and allow ourselves, again, to integrate those experiences energetically. And we may be unable to write about it because it's just too incredible, the experience that we've had. And yet, a part of our awareness has now been able to have this experience, and we can adopt that experience into our life, and it changes us. On some level, we become willing to accept that these experiences can't really be understood through the riddles of the mind, but they are effortless for our essence to take in.
Agreed. And so as we finish our time together, Stephen, I feel we could talk all afternoon, but as we finish our time together, if you could change one thing in the world or heal something in the world, what would it be?
Well, I think it would be to offer an insight to a unifying factor that puts us all in a common light, that we are connected through a strand of energy, and I call it a collective consciousness, that what happens to me happens to you. And that there is no us and them, that really is the illusion of thought, of human thought. And so that we could join each other with a renewed vision of ourselves. And I think we're headed there planetarily. Great. I think more of us are starting to operate in a linked fashion. And I enjoy that part of existence for sure, meeting other people like yourself who share a like mind.
Yes.
And
it's always delightful finding someone else who gets you, right? You're like, oh yeah, I don't have to super explain myself.
Totally. It becomes effortless, right?
That's right. And how can people find you and get your book, Stephen?
So the book is available on all the platforms, sales platforms, but I have written a new version of the book. The second edition is coming out in a month or two. Excellent. And it has quite a few more stories and a lot more context and exercises. The new version was a test run.
Yeah.
And I'm now not promoting the new version any longer, and I'm finishing the second edition and getting ready to launch. So I would urge people to wait for the second edition.
Yeah.
And
Oh, beautiful. Well, whenever that comes out, we can always put that in the show notes and update it so people have the latest information as well. So
thank you. That's great. Yeah.
Easy.
Yeah.
Well, thank you so much for your time, Stephen, and sharing your wisdom and intuition and just everything. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much for your time. Really a pleasure. Take care of yourself.
Thank you for listening to Willow Healing Matters, the podcast. We have so much love and gratitude that you have taken the time out of your day to empower you on your healing journey. The views shared by the person being interviewed might not necessarily reflect that of the host and should be used at your own discernment. Trust what resonates for you and follow your heart and soul guidance. If you have any underlying medical conditions or mental health issues, please consult with your healthcare provider before pursuing any of the recommendations. Likewise, you can always contact the person being interviewed to find out more information. This can be found in the show. Remember to activate, align, heal, empower, and find love in everything that you do.